Oh, you have like your own.
Okay.
Are you bringing an entourage?
What?
Are you bringing an entourage?
I am.
Yay! Come on down. You do like the Price is Right.
You win a car. No.
Good. Well, hey everybody, thanks for sticking around or taking a break, or I know this is a longer day. Again, we will be sending out an email after this, so feel free to give us any feedback. But this is the second year we've kind of run this workshop, and last year we only covered the DOL worker training grant, and we got a lot of requests and questions about some of the other programs and services and different things that are available for everyone out there. And we wanted to make sure that we knew how to connect with those as well and how we could be a better partner. So one of the ways that we can be a better partner and another opportunity that's out there that we get a lot of questions about is on-the-job training. So Ashley Pink is going to speak with us today about that. Your title is real long, so thanks for that. She is the Reemployment Program Coordinator through the Economic Transition and National Dislocated Worker Grant. It's very long. Her title is going to be changing in a few days, so she'll be working under a different initiative and a different grant. But she's going to talk to you today about OJT, and we've got some employer guests who are currently utilizing that program as well, so they can talk to you and answer your questions. And she'll also talk to you about how OJT and apprenticeships can be run symbiotically, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm giving it over to Ashley.
All right. Let's see. I have a lot of hands here. So I'm Ashley Pick, and I work for the Department of Labor. I'm actually out of our Grand Island office, so not out of Lincoln. Kind of out in the field, maybe with some of these employers that I brought with me. But what is on-the-job training? So basically, on-the-job training is earning while you learn. So a job seeker is going to learn the job on the job. Part of our on-the-job training program is that employers will receive a reimbursement of wages for the time that the person is on the job. So basically, it's a hands-on method for a job seeker to learn skills while they're working at the company. The participants paid and will engage in work that the employer has specified are needed skills for the position that they're in. And then, of course, the employer that's providing training receives some financial incentive and gets a reimbursement for working with that participant. The benefits to the employer, on-the-job training helps employers recruit better, hire better prepared employees who are used to workforce expectations, and reduce some training costs. So kind of one thing we were just kind of mentioning was maybe attendance issues in staff. I don't know if you guys see that. Typically with on-the-job training, we try to place people who are going to have some of those work expectations already understood, so they have some of those soft skills developed. There is no enrollment cost to employers, so there's no cost to employers for this program. There's minimal paperwork, and then the employers receive a wage reimbursement for new hires. That can be between 50 to 75% of wages reimbursed over a 26-week period for eligible new hires. That can vary from program to program. The on-the-job training does have several different programs that facilitate it. So that is determined prior to the person starting based on their background as well as your company background. So there's certain factors that go into that. The benefits to the job seeker. So not only does this program benefit the employer, it also benefits the job seeker. Job seekers will learn, they can re-enter the workforce quickly. So especially individuals that have maybe been laid off, if they're coming to our offices for services, we can help connect them with employers to get them back to work quicker. And then we also offer supportive services through our programs. So things like transportation, work, clothing, assistance, tools, things like that. And then there are some other costs as well. Each participant that's in the program, so each job seeker, will work with a career planner that will help them kind of navigate through some of those needs. So With this program, some of the things that employers may not see would be those attendance issues. If someone's having trouble with car repairs or getting tires or things getting to work, our program can step in and help with that. So that person, hopefully wouldn't have as many absences. Same with childcare. If they're having trouble kind of affording that, our program can step in and assist with some of those childcare costs so that they can continue to go to work while their children are obviously taken care of. So who's eligible? Both the employer and the job seeker have to be eligible to meet this program. Employers can be from mostly any sector, the private nonprofit, for-profit, and the public sector. Employers do have to provide workers' compensation, and they do need to be up to date on their unemployment insurance. Did this stop? Okay, so I can just yell. If you aren't up to date on your unemployment insurance and you do want to participate in OJT, you can catch up on that expense and then you would be eligible at that point. And then you cannot, an employer cannot have been disbarred or suspended from receiving federal contracts. The OJT candidate has to be eligible for one of our training programs. So that's either the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, or our trade program. And those are offered throughout the state. They must be starting a new position with the employer, so either a new hire or if it's someone in your company who's accepting a new position, they would also qualify for an OJT. And then some programs may have specific job requirements. So depending on the separate programs, an individual may be required to be full-time, they may need to be permanent, and they may have a minimum hourly wage of $12 an hour. This may vary across the state depending on who the provider is. For these programs. So I'm going to touch on the eligibility piece for job seekers. You as the employers will not need to remember this, but I did want to go through it so that you guys can have an idea of who is eligible for these programs. So as I'm going through it, I want you to think of people that might be working for your company who would have qualified for OJT had we got them enrolled in time. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is known as WIOA. This, there's 4 titles under that. We won't go into that, but this is specifically Title I. And Title I covers the Dislocated Worker Program, the Adult Program, the Out-of-School Youth, and the In-School Youth. So dislocated workers, that's the specific grant that I work on, are individuals who've lost their job to no fault of their own. So these are all people who would qualify for an OJT. That means they have to have been laid off. Individuals that quit or were fired do not meet the qualification of not losing their job to no fault of their own. A transitioning service member. So these are individuals who have left the service within 4 years. So that's a pretty big gap. If you're working or have a veteran program that you are specifically trying to hire veterans, definitely refer them over because they may be eligible for this on-the-job training piece. A military spouse who had to leave employment due to a relocation or maybe military assignment, they would count as a dislocated worker. A homemaker who's been displaced and lost their primary source of income. So this could be maybe somebody who was making the home, they got divorced, and now they have to return to the workforce. They had a spouse pass away, something like that. So they've lost their primary source of income and need to return to work. And then self-employed individuals who've experienced foreclosure, bankruptcy, or natural disaster and had to close their business would also count as being dislocated. The next eligibility criteria is adult. So this is anyone who's 18 years or older, has the eligibility to work in the United States, and if they are male, they've registered for selective service. Now this is a majority of individuals in the United States, and our program funding is a little bit limited. So there is a priority of service that applies to these individuals. The first priority would be veterans with barriers. If they come into our office, they would obviously get priority funding first. Individuals who are low income or have a barrier to employment. The third one is veterans that don't have a barrier. And then the fourth one is basically everyone else, non-veterans and individuals that don't have a barrier. There are 2 youth programs. The out-of-school youth program would be individuals aged 16 to 24 that are not attending school. So they can't be registered or enrolled in any type of school. And they do have to have one of the following. So they have to have a barrier to employment. They could either be a school dropout, maybe have a misdemeanor or felony. If they're homeless, foster child, pregnant or parenting or have a disability, they would qualify for that. And then the in-school youth. This can be anyone ages 14 to 21 that's in school, so they would be registered or attending school. That could be high school or college. They do need to qualify as being low income, and then they also have to have one of the following barriers. So school dropout, offender, misdemeanor or felony, homeless, parent or pregnant, or have a disability. And again, a lot of these questions you guys as employers probably wouldn't ask during an interview because a lot of these things you can't ask. So this would be up to our staff to determine eligibility. If you find a candidate that you're really interested in, you could refer them over, and then our staff would go through and determine, does the participant meet the eligibility for that? And then the last program is our trade program. So this is individuals that were laid off due to their jobs being sent to a foreign country, or perhaps they lost their job because their business lost business with an employer that was doing work overseas. I think I did a terrible job of explaining that, but basically, if the position or the work has went to a foreign country, those individuals would be eligible under this trade program. Companies do file for petitions and meet that criteria. So again, we actually have our trade workforce coordinator here. So if you have questions about the trade program, you could definitely talk to her after this to see if you meet that. So I think one of the best parts about our program is that we have minimal paperwork. The initial paperwork, there's only 3 things that need to be filled out. A pre-award, which is valid for a whole year, so you only have to fill it out once a year, a contract, and a training plan. Now, I highlighted this part because if you take nothing else away from this meeting, this is the one thing I want you to take, that all the paperwork has to be completed prior to the person starting. So all the paperwork has to be done and signed before the person starts their first day of work. And then to receive reimbursement, the only things that are needed is the training plan that we've filled out prior to starting, just has to be signed. Has to be signed that they've completed their training. Payroll records, because we obviously need to know how much we're reimbursing you for. And then a W-9 if this is your first OJT with the state. So once you fill out a W-9 and that's on record with the state, you don't have to fill out a W-9 again unless if your bank information changes. So we'll kind of go through what each of the paperwork is. So the pre-award is used to determine if the employer is eligible. It helps us to determine if you qualify, as well as how much you are potentially eligible to be reimbursed for. So there's 3 sections. The first section is your company information. So company name, address, phone number, who your contact would be. So not very difficult. The second section is about 25 questions about your company to help us determine if you meet that eligibility. So this is questions like, how long has your company been in operation at your facility? How many people do you hire? What's your turnover rate? What positions are you hiring for? What benefits do you offer? So again, someone, maybe you or someone in your HR department should be able to fill out this form pretty easily. And then the third and final section is signatures. And it's just a signature of your staff and a signature of our staff. And then from there, we're able to determine if your company would be eligible to be an employer for an OJT. The second document that needs signed is our contract and assurances. This just explains the rights and responsibilities of the employers who are doing the on-job training. So it kind of lays out, what your responsibilities are. Our staff will actually complete this form using the pre-award that you guys have submitted. So the only thing that you guys as the employer need to do is review it and sign it. So super easy on that one, just a signature. And there are samples of these forms will be included in the virtual resources that you guys will be given. So you can review these to kind of see what those rules and responsibilities are. And this document is typically signed for each OJT. So each participant that comes in, they'll get a specific contract. And then the third and final thing that's signed before an OJT starts is the training plan. And this just helps identify the financial and training obligations that both the Department of Labor has and the employer has. It's specific to each participant based on their training needs. And then it also helps provide some tracking of attainment of skills throughout the training. And there will be a sample of this in your packet as well. So this form also has 3 sections. It's going to have basically the information section at the top, which is going to include the trainee's information, the worksite's information, and then it lays out how much the employer would be reimbursed for the training. The second section is just signatures. So everyone involved in the process would sign this. The participant, so the job seeker, the employer, and then our staff. Just so everyone's aware and on the same page of what the program is. The third section is the training gaps and training tasks to be obtained. So this is put together jointly between the employer and the Department of Labor staff. This typically doesn't need to be hard. A lot of times we see employers kind of give us either their job description or their already existing training plans, and our department can fill this out for you. This is the other part where we can partner with apprenticeships on. So OJTs can be coupled with apprenticeships in that if an individual is doing an apprenticeship, we could do an OJT potentially for the first part to help offset some of those wages. So an example of this, we're actually working with 5 individuals out of the Lincoln and Omaha area that are involved in apprenticeships. The employer sent us over 7 referrals, and 5 of them qualified. So before they started, we were able to get them registered for the OJT. So for the first 3 months of their training, we're reimbursing a percentage of those 5 individuals' wages while they're continuing with their apprenticeship with the company. So it aligns pretty well in terms of what the programs are. And it is our hope that people would, if they start an OJT, continue with your company and continue to be employed long term. However, we do understand that that's not necessarily always realistic. And it is a hire, fire, how Elliot worded it earlier, policy. So if they are not working out, or they decide maybe you as an employer aren't a good fit for them, either party can end the OJT at any time, and the employer will actually still be reimbursed for the hours that the participant has completed. So we have had participants that I think have showed up for work for 2 days, and then at that time it was decided, nope, we're not going to continue with the OJT, and we did honor our contract, and we did reimburse the percentage of wages that the individual showed up for those 2 days. So there is, and if the person is terminated, there is no responsibility for the employer to pay back at all. So keep that in mind. If you're interested in the program, here's kind of the steps to take. So identify a position that you can't fill, either because you've had trouble, can't find qualified workers, and then connect with your local Department of Labor Job Center. So we have job centers all across the state. The next slide I'll have pulled up kind of where those are. So you connect with your local job center and kind of talk about what your company's needs are. They might be able to offer some other creative solutions as well. If it's decided that OJT is the solution for you, then you can fill out the pre-award. And then also start working with our department to identify a good candidate. So this can work in one of 2 ways. If you are already hiring a bunch of people, one of our employers up here did a big growth part, and so they were hiring a lot of people, so they sent over all of their referrals to us. And then we were able to determine whether the candidate was eligible and then do the OJT that way. The other option is we do work with job seekers through our program. So if we have a job seeker that would be a good fit for your company, we could also refer job seekers to you. And if you're working with our agencies, we can, as a team kind of come together and say, hey, this company is needing this many people, keep an eye out for when people are coming in looking for this agency, that we can send them their way. So those are kind of how we would work together with your company. And then our staff will determine if the individual that's referred or is being referred is eligible and complete the paperwork. Your company would hire and train them following your hiring processes that are already in place. So this does not require you to create any type of new process. And then during the on-the-job training, the individual will be your employee. They would be trained with the skills that you identified they needed to learn. And our staff will check in periodically to see how training's going. Is there anything that's needed? Does something need to be stepped in? Maybe does a hard conversation need to be had with the participant in terms of, their work ethic or soft skills that maybe our staff could assist with? And then the final step is just to submit payroll records monthly for reimbursement. Is there any questions kind of on that part so far?
Yeah, got a question.
Yeah.
Make sure you give a scenario because it's easier for me to really grasp it.
Yes.
By applying what we do today. Today, normally we'd be not such a dire need for employees. We hire in 2 weeks. But right now we're hiring in a week. So it's not uncommon that a recruiter will look at an application on Monday, track it down by phone, get it on Wednesday to interview with a person. And then they have to do drug back screening, conditional offer on Thursday, and you start with Monday. So where in that window do you have to get that?
Yes.
Because that's probably 75% of employees are hired that way today.
So we typically see if we can have a week to try to get them enrolled. Because what happens is if you refer them to us, we have to contact them and we need to make sure they're eligible. And because we're a government program, we of course have to verify everything. So sometimes that means the participant has to bring us documents so that we can get them enrolled. That process may take up to a week. I do know sometimes we can get it done within a day, or usually your first OJT, I would say give us a little time. Once we kind of get the ball rolling and all the paperwork's in place and everyone kind of is familiar with the signing of it, we've done enrollments in a day. So that's kind of the process there. You could, if you know you want to hire someone after the interview, you could send them to us and we could start that process. If you decide, if they don't pass their background check and they're enrolled in our program, our staff can still assist them with finding other work too. So I would say after the hiring, after you've decided you want to hire them, is when you could send them over and say we're wanting to move forward with that.
How do you refer them? Would I just send you an email, Ashley? Like, how does that?
Yes, so that's where you'll want to contact your local career center. And so each of our offices across the state has a workforce coordinator that's specifically going to be working with this program. So if you can connect with them or the business service representative in that office, and then shoot referrals over.
And then if someone is accepted, is an employer able to say, hey, I referred so-and-so over, did they come?
Yes, yep, so if they referred, hopefully the referral gets directly to the person, but then they would, I would work with you directly to make sure we have all the paperwork in place and everything, so you would know whether the individual showed up or not. Our program is free. Participants have the choice to not participate in it. So you could refer someone over and they could be eligible, but if they say, no, I don't want to be in this program, there's nothing that we could do. We do try to incentivize that we can offer supportive services, and this is a benefit to your employer. I have seen employers that work with OJT sometimes be a little more lenient with the staff that are on the OJT because they are receiving that wage reimbursement. So that's kind of something else that we can also try to incentivize in that way, is they'll get that additional support sometimes outside of work.
Other side of this question, because we do a lot of staffing agencies, and then we can see what was staffing agencies doing out, and we see a lot of people through large work all around for this. So interesting in our staffing agencies, they're not our real hires. And we're going to hire them, they're going to all over and on my contract. What gap is there? Is there a time frame between like we refer them and they get approved, like you're saying maybe we need to approve? Is there a gap on the other side of that we have to retain them? Or is that kind of open?
No, yes. Are you asking if you hire someone, do you have to keep them on for so long?
No, I'm asking, so like we refer them to you, you do the process, you don't approve, we have to, if we refer them, we have to then employ them right within the week.
Oh, no, and we've actually had employers who they, we call them, we're like, this individual qualifies, for up to $7,000 worth of training. Can you put, we just based on our caseload right now, we cannot get them started by Monday. Would you be able to put their start date off? And sometimes the employer and the participant say, yes, absolutely, I would really like to be in this program, so that, they're kind of flexible around that. Sometimes that can't happen, so, and to your point on staffing agencies, it does have to be a direct hire with your company.
Right, I would say like sometimes you see people come to our staffing agency, but if it's fit for you guys.
Oh, okay.
If we could like in that transition,
yeah,
utilize you guys and help them as well, because sometimes we get really good candidates and it's really good, but they have a lot of these obstacles, and I think you guys can help them. And that would be awesome for both of us, we can utilize that. Is there any kind of hacking or website that we can direct them to get them excited about your program?
Yes, so I didn't, so I specifically work with dislocated workers, so I'm kind of trying to think. OJT encompasses obviously a lot of programs. I have a video to show next that might kind of explain a little bit about OJT, that might get them a little more excited or understanding about what the program is. So that can help. There is also some resources and links that I've included in the virtual resources that you can maybe utilize as well.
Janelle has additional things she wants to add.
Actually, if I could go back to what you said, what can we do as an employee or an employer to get that employee plugged into our program? Mm-hmm. One of the first things that we will ask if I'm talking to somebody is go to the NEworks.nebraska.gov website and make a profile. And then on the left-hand side, there's something called Eligibility Explorer. They need to fill out that form because that will start them in the process of the application on their side. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Go to the website.
Yes.
NEworks.nebraska.gov. That's where everybody goes to apply for unemployment. There's job boards. That's where they'll apply for the WIOA. Sorry.
No, that's yeah.
So if it's a registered apprenticeship, can they start the education part of the apprenticeship and not start the employment and still be okay with the not having the
yes. So the other piece of the WIOA program that I didn't touch on is what we call occupational skills training. So if your registered apprenticeship education piece is approved, the program may actually be able to help with some of those educational costs. Because the employer is responsible for the educational piece of it. So our program can kind of assist in offsetting that as well. So yes, if they start the education prior, depending on which category they fall into, we may not be able to assist. But as long as it's prior to them starting their first day of work. So prior to whenever you put them on payroll is when you would need to do it. So here is our local job centers across Nebraska. It's a little smaller actually than I thought it was going to be. We have Scottsbluff, Sidney, North Platte, Lexington, Kearney, Grand Island, Hastings, Columbus, Norfolk, Fremont, Omaha, Lincoln, Beatrice, and Nebraska City. So definitely contact the one that's closest to you and kind of find more out about how they run their OJT program and what the process is for them to get that started. So here is our video.
Training employees can be expensive for any business, but leaving positions vacant because of the lack of skilled workers can be even more costly. That's where on-the-job training comes in. Here's an example of how this program can be a win-win for employers and motivated job seekers. John is struggling to find employees for a position in his business, so he reaches out to his local Nebraska Department of Labor Job Center. NDOL recommends on-the-job training. After signing up, John is ready to find a candidate who will earn as they learn, and his business will be eligible for reimbursement of wages paid to participating employees. Susan recently lost her job and is looking for employment. She has some of the skills potential employers are looking for, but has been overlooked due to a lack of formal education and on-the-job experience. She too reaches out to her local NDOL job center, who determines that she's eligible for on-the-job training. Susan then makes a connection with John. His company hires Susan and receives a wage reimbursement for her training, while Susan receives support and guidance from the NDOL team. John has gained a loyal and skilled employee, and Susan has finally found the opportunity she's been waiting for. Interested in this program for your business? First, identify the position you can't fill due to a lack of qualified workers. Then connect with your local Department of Labor Job Center so we can explore your options. Next, if on-the-job training is right for you, we'll enroll in the program with minimal paperwork. Then we'll work with you to identify a good candidate who may be already connected to an NDOL job center, or you can recommend applicants to our program to see if they qualify for on-the-job training. Finally, you'll hire an employee who will start working for you as they learn the skills you identify as needed for the position. After the individual begins working, you will receive reimbursement for their wages as outlined by the contract signed prior to your new employee's first day on the job. Nebraska's on-the-job training reimbursement program has saved hundreds of Nebraska employers thousands of dollars, while they gain dedicated, skilled employees, and has helped workers learn new skills and find meaningful careers. Connect with us today to learn more. Contact ndol.economictransition@nebraska.gov or visit dol.nebraska.gov.
So I invited some employers here who participated in our on-the-job training program because I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to maybe ask them questions about their experience and anything that you guys may have as employers. And also, if you have questions for me, you can ask them as well. So I'll give the mic over. We have Tammy with Livingston Enterprises, Inc. She works in human resources, and then Joyce as well with Royal Engineering Composites, and she is the training and development coordinator. So I'll let you guys kind of introduce yourselves and then just explain a little bit about the work that you do, and then what positions you've used the OJT with in your company.
Okay. So I'm Joyce Abel, and I work for Royal Engineering Composites in Minden. We manufacture advanced aerospace composites. Working for any of the airlines, military, different things like that. So we filled mostly production. Because of the requirements of the program, most of our professionals didn't qualify. So a lot of those. And we had sort of during the time we had the contract, we had a huge influx of employees. We had big contracts come in, we needed like 100 people. We almost doubled our workforce. So we used up a lot. I think we filled, 57 people qualified for the program. So I had a spreadsheet so that I could keep track of everything. Today we wouldn't be putting on that amount of people in a year, I don't think. You never know. Contracts come in, then you might. So, have any questions, anything you want to know?
Okay, yeah.
There you go.
And I am Tammy Suni, and the company that I work for is Livingston Enterprises. We're based in Fairbury, Nebraska. We are swine production, so not quite as exciting as aerospace over here, but we have different locations, some in Kansas, some in Nebraska. We're right on the line there. And so most of the people that we have had on the on-the-job training program are, again, direct production individuals. And believe it or not, there's a lot that goes into learning correct swine production, so it has been helpful. We have not utilized it with 57 people, but we have used it for quite a few people and had a very good success rate with those that we have put through the program. And as Ashley said, the process to get started is relatively easy. I think this is one of the questions we were maybe going to talk about a little bit later, but I think the biggest piece for me is remembering when someone comes in as a new candidate to start that process and not try to overthink if I think they would or wouldn't qualify. Send them over right away and let someone else take care of that and figure that piece out for us. So.
Yeah, well, do you guys know how many participants you've utilized OJT with, and about how much in savings and wage reimbursement you guys have had?
Okay, I have to look at my note of this. We had 57 out of all the people we hired. We probably put on 150 during the course of the contract. About 20% are still employed by us after 2 years, so not too bad. Let's see, and how much you wanted to know?
Yeah, what was kind of your average maybe wage reimbursement that you got for each participant, or how much did you save in?
We had about $1,000. We called it the reimbursement grant. That was our name. It's much shorter than yours. It made it easy for me. About $1,000 to $4,400 per participant. We take about 6 to 8 weeks in basic training. We are not a assembly line, so it's more of a craft. So it takes a little while to learn what to do. And most of the people, I would say maybe one in my 18 years, actually knew what a composite was when they came in. It's not something that's very common. So they've never worked in the industry. But they work on one product, and they produce that product all the way through their department. So they don't, it's not like assembly line work. So it's a little stranger. There you go.
And Tammy, do you know how many you've worked with, or about how much kind of you think you've saved in wage reimbursement?
I think that, I did not look that up. I did look up the wage reimbursement, but we've only had probably this year 2 or 3 people that have been a part of the program. But on average, it's been about $3,500 that we have had in reimbursement for those individuals. And again, we've had a few that we've referred over that didn't qualify, but for those that have, it's been a very easy program to use.
And you shared your retention rate. Tammy, do you know what your retention rate is?
Those individuals all are still with us.
So we did something a little different because of the amount of people we had, and I just sent everybody to them. I sent the information to Michelle, who's my representative, on every single person we hired. And they sorted through, unless they were a rehire, and I knew for sure they wouldn't qualify. So even the professionals I sent to them, and they would just say no. And then I kept track of all that, so I knew who was there. And then I did one column in it that gave me the date that they should be reimbursed, so I took care of that. So I could remind them, oh, I haven't received this or whatever. So it worked, it was super easy. And you're not required to do that stuff.
So Joyce had a question. So what's your turnaround time when you interview and then actually have to start work? Was it a 2-week period, is it a 3-week period, or do you turn around the next week?
About a week. We interview, offer them the job. When they accept, they start on that Tuesday, the next Tuesday. In most cases, if they have a reason to delay, they do. But what we did initially, I don't know if they do this normally, most of our folks couldn't make it to Hastings from Minden. They didn't have the car or whatever to travel. So Michelle would come there, and I might have 6 or 7 people lined up to start, and she would assess them that day before we put them on. So I'd have them come in at 7 or 6, and Michelle would go through all her paperwork, and then they would start at 8. And it can be done. And then later on, when we weren't hiring quite so many, I would just send her the information, and she would contact them and get a hold of them during that week.
Yes, yeah, Royal is one of the examples where we did do the enrollments rather quickly because they were hiring so many people. And so I know that Royal also, I believe, worked with their participants to make sure that they had all the documents that we would need up front so we could collect them. That way we could do that enrollment within a day, get the paperwork signed and get it started.
It's kind of the same documents you need driver's license and, you know.
Yeah, we have to verify they're eligible to work in the United States, and then that they meet whatever criteria their eligibility is. So
I think to that point, the only time I think that we have had difficulty is when the person has not responded timely, the job seeker. That's been the delay more so than anything related to what the Nebraska Department of Labor has done. It's been the job seeker not being responsive or timely.
Yes, and one thing that's really helpful if you're referring a participant to us, let them know someone from our agency will be reaching out to contact them, because otherwise they might be like, what? Sometimes this program might be too good to be true, so just that they're aware, someone from the Department of Labor is going to be contacting you to see if you're eligible for some training services.
Some people won't pick up the phone if it's the Department of Labor.
Yes, we have different departments, so sometimes they don't want the other departments to call them. But did you see any benefits to your participants through the OJT program? Were they better employees? Did you notice any difference that way?
I don't know that I could maybe say that I noticed a difference that way.
We didn't, because we didn't adjust any hiring practices. The hiring generalist, HR generalist that hires and myself are two total separate things. So I managed the requirements of the program. She hired people. I don't get involved in that at all. So she didn't even know what we were getting or why we were. I didn't even know why we were, what the requirements were, because I didn't want that to affect hiring. So.
And then you touched on this a little bit, but what was the process like for you guys, from the start of the OJT through the end of it? What were your thoughts on it?
Very seamless. Like I said, the biggest hurdle was getting the job seeker to work with that person. Again, we don't have an employment center in our community, so if they needed to travel, which I think one did on their own, just making sure that those connections were made and getting that process started. But Emily is the individual that we worked with, and she's very responsive and kept me informed if she was having difficulty in getting in touch with somebody, so that I could kind of facilitate between the two if needed.
I actually didn't know that this would pay for, like, tires on their car if they need things like that. So I don't know if any of them were helped by that or not.
Yes, and typically on the employer side, you guys wouldn't know that. Our staff does keep confidentiality, so you may not even know what eligibility criteria they meet. You'll just know, yes, they're eligible, or no, they're not. And that, that's just for privacy reasons. What do you guys think of the paperwork? Was it outrageous and ridiculous, or was it?
Not at all.
We have a job description for everybody. We just use that. It's already there, so it's not a problem.
So do you guys have any questions for me or for the employers that you would like to know about OJT?
You guys work with individuals, like, I know you said, like, options, like, one of them, or have a sponsor program. I got, like, a time frame of how long that out of the process, and or do you guys work with what often are transitioning from personal facilities and work?
Okay, so repeat your question.
Like correctional facilities, or like in-house offices are in transitioning, like work-related programs, things like that, and then what are also like for
foster care, yep. So that will vary. Gosh, I used to do the youth program. You're going to challenge me here because it's been a little bit, but as long as we're starting a reentry program where we may be starting to kind of work with getting individuals some of those work-ready skills while they're still in the facility. We probably wouldn't enroll them in the WILA program until they're out and then ready to start looking for work. Because the goal of this program is really for them to have employment after we're done with them. That's kind of what our federal performance measures are looking at, is after they're out of our program, are they employed in the second and fourth quarter. So once they're out of a facility and wanting to start job searching, we could absolutely look at enrolling them, helping them with resume, helping them with job search, getting them connected to employers that may be willing to work with whatever barriers they might have, depending on charges and stuff. Does that answer that?
So you guys are doing anything when they're eligible for work? Like they're still in a program, but they're eligible for work. They're coming into the workforce. You guys have to
like work release, right?
Yeah, like how many you can have the house and things like that.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we could. Yeah, as long as they're just not in like prisons. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah. And each office, each career planner, depending on their level of comfortability, may kind of vary with where they are at that. They may partner with you to kind of make sure that person's ready. But yeah, we can work as long as those individuals have a capability of working and going to work. We would be able to work. And then
we kind of identify like through certain agencies, those would be the ones.
And then foster care, they may, if they're in school, they would have to meet the in-school youth criteria. If they're out of school, they'd have to meet the out-of-school youth criteria. But as long as they reach age 16, so if they reach age 16 in the foster care system, I believe they meet the foster care eligibility barrier for that. So even if they're 24, and maybe they were in foster care at 18, they would actually still meet that eligibility criteria. Yes, yeah. Yep.
I have a question.
Yep.
Does your team keep records of, for the employee, those extra benefits of that, support with child care and those things? Do you keep kind of a record of the individuals that take advantage of that and relate that back to if that keeps them employed with an employer? I feel like that would be an interesting piece to share with employers where they have that benefit of how that actually impacts that employee and their ability to maintain their job with that employer, because as employers, you can't, you're not able to support their child care issues or those types of things. So is there some kind of like information that you guys have compiled that you could, it's another benefit to an employer really, is like, if we have support services for these individuals and, to keep them being able to come to work and because they have these options available. You guys have it.
We don't. We don't have any, I guess, specific data on that. We could probably, run reports within our system to compare those.
Do you see a lot of individuals taking advantage of those?
Yeah. So, gosh, I probably don't have the numbers. The dislocated worker grants goal was to enroll about 300 individuals in the last 3 years. And we met that goal, so yay. But we helped probably about 150 of them. I think we have 57 that we put in OJTs and 150 individuals that we helped with supportive services. So a lot of people take advantage of that supportive service piece.
So when they do the interview, I've never sat through her interviews, so do they say we can help you with this, 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 and this?
So each career planner is going to do it separately. I know when I did it, I would sit down and say, what are your needs? And we would go through kind of what those barriers are going to be so that we could address them. Hopefully that's what most people are doing. Janelle, do you have how do you, when you sit down and kind of talk about our program, do you talk about the supportive service piece?
Yeah, and I'm going to bring up, you talked about the 5, that we were given 7 and we're given 5, so I'm case managing those 5. And so I'm in direct contact with them. What are we doing? 3 of them have to move. So we've been talking about, hey, when is your move date? What are you going to need for this move? Okay, how can I help you with this? So I actually will help provide money for them to actually move. So for the rental truck, they were virtual learning for a while. So hey, how's your internet? It doesn't work. Do you need help with that? Yeah, I do. Okay, let me pay internet for the week. Hey, how are you doing with rent? I'm not on unemployment anymore, and I've got this gap. I need to start a new job. Okay, how are you going to pay rent this month? I'm struggling with that. Okay, let's go ahead and get you some rent. So those kinds of services, and yes, at the beginning, I went through that. This is what's going to do for the employer. they're going to get reimbursement. But for you, this is why I want to have you involved, is so that I can help you with these things if it becomes a barrier. There's one that I have, nope, everything's great, and that's all I hear. It's just one line. That's it. He doesn't need anything. Okay, that's fine.
How often do you check in with folks when they're on the program then to just give them that extra wraparound or support of services?
That's a good question. So I contact the employer. So I would contact the employer, hey, how are things going? Are there any issues that you have that I can help with? And then I contact the person that's hired, hey, how are things going? Is there anything I can help with this month? So that's on a monthly basis.
And then how long are they in the program, or how long are they provided those services?
So it depends on, I actually may have to jump in on this one, but it depends on the contract that you guys have signed. How long is this OJT going to happen? And then at the end, when they exit that OJT, then I'm in contact with them 4 times over the next year. Are you still employed? How are things still going? Just to make sure that this OJT and the help that we gave both the employer and the employee was a success.
Yeah. So we have a kind of a form that helps us decide how long an OJT should be for. So we use what we call ONET, and ONET has SVP codes that kind of line out the difficulty of a job. So like if a job is in an SVP code 4 or 5, those are going to be your more entry level positions. And so we may not reimburse for as long, because training for an entry level position shouldn't be as difficult as maybe someone who's in a 7 or 8 SVP code, where that is, someone who probably needs some formal education and things like that. So we can, time may be deducted if a person has previous work experience in this field, or if they have previous educational experience. And so that's why each training plan is individualized, because it's really dependent upon the participant as well. We've done OJTs that last a month. We've done OJTs that last 6 months, depending on which of the programs they're in and the criteria they meet.
Got a question for, I guess, both USC and Tammy. So it sounds like, almost all the folks that you run this program, it's part of your own hiring process, and they're getting into the Department of Labor office for the assessment. I guess, how are you selling that to them? What's in it for the applicant or the person you're looking to hire to do that? Are you, giving them they might help with internet or childcare, or how are you pitching that to them?
I didn't.
Just say you gotta do this.
I just said the hiring manager would say, you'll receive a call from the NDOL, please speak with them. We're in a program where we get some reimbursement for our new hires to help with training. That's it. I didn't even know about the things that they did.
I think my strategy will change slightly after this presentation. But
I actually had somebody decline the program because she didn't see any benefit for her. So now I can tell you.
And yeah, so there are some people, and surprisingly, most people don't decline the program. Most people are willing to do it. So
I had 1 out of the 57 that were accepted.
I would think from HR standpoint, like now that you know this, I would think that you would kind of fall as but we see this value in you, and we see, because I would have to that are very open, maybe I would know that already to make if they're going to be a qualified candidate. It's like we're buying in, we're getting something, or possibly can get something, and I just think it really creates a good journey for make you care about their personal needs as well as what it can give you as an employee. So,
now we put all the funds back into the training budget, so that we used all the funds that we got for the reimbursement program to increase our training for the company. So,
and we can do OJTs within any occupation. Both of these ladies work in production. We've done IT, we've done healthcare, we've done telecommunications. We've worked with big corporations. We've worked with companies that only have 5 employees. So this program can really be tailored to meet the individual needs of each employer, wherever that is. So.
Do you have a maximum amount of time or money that you can reimburse?
Yes, so that varies for each program. My program's $10,000. Trade is.
I have to look. It's about 10,000. Yeah, don't put that in stone, but
The Nebraska Department of Labor WIOA, I believe, is $7,000 for the adult, youth, and dislocated worker. Lincoln and Omaha WIOA has a different provider, so their wage limits may also change. So that's not a set answer, but yes, each program has a limit, but it will vary based on the participant's eligibility.
So the question I have is, so if somebody in this audience is interested in looking further into this, would you recommend to get with your representative in your town or near your town job center, just kind of walk through the process to find out if it's even realistic?
Yes, yep, absolutely. I would definitely encourage you to contact your local job center, probably the WIOA, or if you just say OJT, they'll get you to someone who knows what that means. And then, if it is right, fill out that pre-award, because that pre-award is good for a whole year. So say you guys fill it out now, but you don't hire for 6 months, that piece will already be done in 6 months, so you won't have to redo that. So that's just one step that kind of improves or decreases the time it takes for that enrollment. So.
And does everybody in this room know where the Lincoln Job Center's at? Yeah. It's downtown, in Energy Square, in the Southeast Community College building, down there on like 12th and O, 13th and O.
1111 O Street.
Yep.
Suite 205.
Yep.
And a lot of we all have virtual capability. So if you wanted to schedule a virtual meeting with someone, if you didn't want to go in person, the pre-award is in the virtual resource packet. It can be filled out electronically and emailed over. I think Tammy was saying she actually hasn't ever even met Emily in person. So a lot of these things can be done virtually without necessarily needing face-to-face. So, but if you do like face-to-face, we're always willing to do that as well.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
One more thing. Pop quiz time. What is the most important thing to take away from this? Yes. Do the paperwork before they start their first day of work.
Yay! Thank you. We will be back here at 1 o'clock for our next session. So enjoy your lunch. I would recommend the